love horror. Ever since I was a stupid little child, I've always loved anything remotely scary. Horror games, horror movies, true crime videos on YouTube, the whole shebang. As a kid, I actually used to go ghost hunting with my aunt, which never really amounted to anything, but it was very enjoyable and some of my fondest memories. Throughout my time learning and developing games over the past couple years, one idea has persisted in my head this entire time. A horror game with graphics inspired by the games of the PS1 era. Thank you. I know I'm original. Thank you. Yeah. I know this is a very done-to-death genre of game. If you just go to the itch.io homepage, you are definitely going to see a slew of retro-inspired horror games, and even on YouTube, there's a truckload of content teaching other game developers how to make that exact type of game. However, I don't really care. This has been something I've wanted to do for a very, very long time, so here I am. I'm making a horror game. So, getting the setup out of the way, I guess I can start showing what I've been working on. I started off by making a plane and giving it a tile and grass texture that I kind of stole from a random website.
Major fracture detected.
I don't plan on using a plane for very long since having the ground completely flat does not look very good, but I'm using it for right now and then I'll switch to a terrain once I'm done prototyping. After that, it's now time for my favorite part of development, player movement. The original version of the player movement was incredibly simple. It's pretty much the exact same code for my Pong project, but instead of just up and down, it's in all directions. Basically, we get the reference to the character controller component, get the horizontal and vertical input axes, and assign them to variables, create a new vector3 variable called move, which gets the input, and assigns that to the move function off the character controller, multiplying it by a speed variable, and then multiplying that by delta time. Later on, however, I did completely rewrite the player code, but we'll get to that in time. I also added in a sprint mechanic, which just speeds the player up a little bit, depending on if the left shift key is held or not. I only want the player to look from side to side, which is a lot easier to program than up and down since we just have to rotate the player and not the camera itself. We basically get the x-axis input of the mouse and rotate the player body around the y-axis based on whatever direction the mouse turns. I also created a function to change the cursor lock state to make it easier to test the game. Great, so now we have a player that's able to move and look around. Now I just need to make it look like a PS1 game. Most of the games in the PS1 era were forced to comply with the hardware limitations of the time. Because of this, many of the games had very low resolutions. As a result, the games looked very pixelated and low quality, giving it the retro gaming look that has become very popular in the last couple years. There's a couple ways of recreating that look in modern engines. Either you down-res the game entirely, or you just make it look like it's a lower resolution than it is. For this project, I decided to just make it look low res instead of actually making it low res. That shouldn't be too hard, right?
And inside that folder, I'm going to create a render texture.
What the fuck is a render texture? I then needed some fog. In order to do volumetric fog, I needed to either switch my product to the universal render pipeline or buy this $47 Unity asset that absolutely tanks performance.
Alright, editor's note, Aura 2 does not in fact tank performance. I don't know where I heard that from, but it is actually a very great plugin. I don't know why I didn't do research on Aura 2 before I actually wrote the script and recorded the voiceover, but it's a really good plugin from what I've seen, so ignore me.
So, I went with Unity's default fog. I had to change the skybox to the same color as the fog to make this believable, because for some odd reason, the fog doesn't affect the skybox. Once I sold my soul to the Unity gods, got that working, it's now time to prototype a map. Now, I've never really been the best at game design and level design. Just look at my Pong game. But luckily, I have a lot of inspiration from games like Silent Hill and Resident Evil to work off of in terms of story and level design. Before I start level designing, however, I think it's time for a quick coffee break.
My doctor asked me if you were to die for, but you're not even someone I would lie for. Of course not, get off your fucking high horse, we just fought. I compromise for second place. Don't bother asking why it took so long to show my face.
We got the coffee. Listen, I may have a caffeine addiction, but not all three of these are for me, I swear. Yay. I love sitting at lights. Whee. Alright, let's get to work.
Thought it was a swear, you got me all wrong. You don't have to worry about that just because my smoke gonna protect you. I know, don't worry about him, he can get to you.
You know what? fuck it. Once the prototype level was in place, I wanted to add in some head bobbing. The problem is, I don't know how to do that. So, I decided it's time for a change. I took a page out of Randy's book and just rewrote the entire fucking player controller script, and oh my god, this code is so much cleaner and it's completely universal. I am coping. The movement code is fairly similar to what I had before, just a lot cleaner, and it makes a lot more sense. We have a lot of variables now to control gravity, walk speed, sprint speed, the key bindings, the character controller. What the fuck is a lambda expression? To break this down, we have a function called handle movement input. This basically checks whatever state we're in, whether it's sprinting or walking, and then it multiplies the speed of whatever state it is by whatever input axis we're, well, inputting. This then gets assigned to a current input variable. Then it creates a move direction variable, which gets whatever direction we are currently moving in, whether it's forward or right and the opposite of the two, and multiplies it by a current input variable. After that, we create a function called apply final movements, which checks if the player is not grounded, in which case it pulls a player towards the ground, acting sort of like gravity. This will be useful later on once elevation comes into play. Then it calls the move method off of the character controller component and passes in the move direction and multiplies it by delta time. And just like that, the player is moving around. Now, all that's needed is to move the camera. The camera code is incredibly simple. We just get the rotation of the player and multiply by a Euler,
is to imagine rotating an object around three easy-to-think-about axes, where the relevant angles for these rotations are commonly called Euler angles.
Ah, Euler. Got it. An Euler angle. I don't know what the hell an Euler angle is. This code basically just turns the player around depending on which direction the mouse moves on the x-axis, I think. With that, the player is now completely finished. God fucking damn it, no it's not. Now it's time for head bobbing. Currently, the player just kind of floats around the map instead of like walking like a normal person. This causes the movement to feel really weird and not as human as I would like. And instead of doing this the easy way with animations, I did the head bobbing in code. No, I am not okay. What the fuck does this code do? I don't understand it. Please tell me what is going on. I've been continuing to work on this project at the same time as writing the script. As of the day of writing, November 14th, 2021, the player is mostly finished. Today, I basically just cleaned up the hierarchy and refactored some of the code. With that, I think that's pretty much everything I've done so far in this game. Before I end the video, however, I do have some ideas in terms of a story and atmosphere. My main inspiration for this project is The Blair Witch Project, which is one of my favorite horror movies of all time. The main point of that movie is that they never show the witch. It's always this entity that exists but is never shown. The entire movie is all about tension and anxiety with no cheap jump scares. My goal for this game is to try and do that exact thing. Make a game all about tension. I want the game to feel scary without actually forcing it. Maybe it's a little overzealous of me and probably a bit pretentious, but it's how I currently want to build this game. With that, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.
Break down in real time. My head is underwater, but my body